everyone. So in video 3 of Lightroom masking, I want us to walk through the brush, linear gradient, and radial gradient. So if you've used Lightroom in the past, you're probably familiar with these 3 mask tools, but I'm going to walk you through them and hope that maybe there's something new that you'll learn today. So first up is the brush tool, and this is the one that you're probably going to use the most. It is just so handy to be able to customize your image. So when you click on the brush tool, you have your brush here. You can modify your size. You can also use your bracket key to increase or decrease on your keyboard. You have your feather, flow, and density. I like to keep my feather, think about that as being softness. So I like to keep it up high unless I'm doing something very specific. Flow and density, I keep usually around 80. Think of those as the amount of like paint on your mask. I also keep auto mask on because that is where the AI technology is helping you kind of stay within the lines. If it's ever bothering you, you can turn it off. So let's get started. And for this image, I'm thinking about brightening underneath this rose just a little bit and giving it a little bit more of a pop. And I also may work on this shadow right here. So let's start first with this bottom area. So I'm going to make sure my feather is pretty high up because I want this to be pretty soft. Now my mask is set to hot pink and my rose is pink. So I am going to come in and I'm going to change the color of my mask. So let's pick something totally different so that we can really see it. So you can see I've got my brush pretty high up and Lightroom is doing a great job of staying within the lines of my flower. So it really such an improvement over brushes of times past. It really does a good job. So we can get as minute and as detailed as we want, but I'm just going to add a little pops of light. So I'm not too worried about getting too detailed with my mask. But just know that you can, if you really need it to be exact, you can do that. So that's pretty good. All right, so now what I'm going to do is turn off the overlay and I'm going to bring up the exposure just a little bit in that area, just a tiny bit to really brighten it. Now the beauty is if I see there's a spot where I want more, I can come in and continue to add my brush and you can see it's changing these other areas as well. Maybe I want to brighten under there. And if you decide you make a mistake, all you have to do is click the erase and come back and you can erase that off. So the brush tool is fantastic. Now, if there's another area that you want to impact with a brush, you can just create new mask, do another brush. You can also remember that you can name these. So for this one, I'm going to make my brush larger. I wanted to see if I can soften this shadow right here. All right, so I'm going to come in with that area. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the shadow really high. I'm going to add reduce the clarity to really soften it. And I may brighten it just a little so that it's not as much of a shadow. I'm going to come in and just brush back over that line and that corner. And let's see that before. It was kind of dark in there and after. I think I like it a little bit better, so I'm going to stick with that for now. I could also work on it up here if I wanted to soften that. Okay, so the brush tool is fantastic. You can really customize and personalize every part of your image using that brush tool. So let's move on to the next one, and that is a linear gradient. So a linear gradient is a gradient that works like a line. So you click anywhere in your image and you can drag it. And it's going to make the part that's heaviest with your mask paint is where it's going to be darker, and then it feathers it as it goes. So I'll show you by changing the exposure, we can see how that is just softly fading that onto that side. Now you can also turn this, if you hover, you can turn it around and you can come down in this area and grab the hand tool and move your mask. You can adjust the height and you can adjust the feather point. So we can move that all around. So this is a great way to come in and make adjustments to the sky or the foreground of your image. So you can see I can darken that exposure and then I've got all this beautiful light above. So that's one way to use a linear gradient. let's go to another image, and I think I had done this earlier, so I am going to go back to the beginning of this image, and I'm going to add a linear gradient here, and I'm going to come down and I want to just impact the sky. Now this is another example where my mask color is not working, so I'm going to come in and just change that really fast. And now I can see exactly where that gradient is. And I want to bring it almost down to the horizon line and then have it softly fall off. And now what I'm going to do is darken the exposure a little bit to bring out the details. I'm also going to add a little bit of clarity, maybe a little dehaze, and I can change the temperature of the sky if I wanted to. So what that has done is allow me to just work on this sky area and softly bring it down. Now I could have done a select sky, but that would have been a hard stop. And I really wanted it to look more natural. And so I'm using a linear gradient because it's then going to fall off. You can see the color is just getting softer like a feather as we go. So here's the before and here's the after with that more dramatic sky that we were able to bring out in the details. All right, so that's a linear gradient. Let's go back to our rose image, and the third option you have available is the radial gradient. And radial gradient I find really useful to help create vignettes or to just work on a certain part of your image. So you're just going to click anywhere in your image and it's going to draw a circle or an oval. And again, you've got all these points. You can make it, and that's where it's going to feather out into your image. So with this selected, we would be impacting everything that's in the center of this image. So let's just say we wanted to add a little bit of brightness in the center. We can do that using this radial. We could also darken the center. And then another tip is we can actually invert that gradient. So I'm going to show the overlay. Now we've inverted it, and this is how we can actually add a vignette to our image that's pretty customized. So we've gone from that to there. Let me turn off the overlay so you can see the after effect. So that was before and that's after, just adding that soft vignette using the Radial Tool. Now the Radial Tool can work great. Let me see if I can find another image. And let's see, let's go to this one. Let's say we just wanted to brighten the center of this and we don't want to use the brush. We don't want to have to brush on and all of that. We can grab our radial gradient. We could come over and make a really small circle right here because it's so much faster than the brush. And then we could come in and just add that exposure. And what it's going to do is really feather it out for you so it looks really natural. And it's way faster than having to do the brush tool. So lots of different ways to use that radial. Same thing here with this image. I could grab the radial gradient. I could come in and kind of circle in this center area just to maybe give it a little pop of exposure, maybe a little bit of clarity, dehaze, and just really bring out the details in that center part of the image. So we've covered these three tools, the brush, linear gradient, and radial gradient, and you can use all of them in an image. So I could come in now with this linear like we did before. I worked on the sky. I could use the brush tool to come in and brush on in some particular areas. You've really got so many options available to you, and they can be really handy when you're doing editing of all types of images. All right, so in the next video, the fourth, I'm going to cover color range and luminance range. Those are how we really make fine-tune adjustments to our colors and our brightness.